Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Slavery Archive Book Club. Today, we are here to listen to and have a conversation with one of my favorite people in the whole world, Julia Gaffield, who is the author of this phenomenal book. I have Avenged America, uh, Jean-Jacques Dessalines, and Haiti's Fight for Freedom. And before I pass on the mic to Julia so that she can tell us a little bit about her book, I wanted just to say a few words about her. Let me start first by telling you who she is in an official capacity. She's associate professor of history at William and Mary. She is right now the interim director of the William and Mary Quarterly. She's an award-winning historian. Her first book, Haitian Connections in the Atlantic World, Recognition After Revolution, published by North Carolina Press, won the Mary Alice and Frederick Booker Book Prize from the French Colonial Historical Society. And she has published countless articles in peer-reviewed journals on the history of Haiti and its implications to the rest of the Atlantic world and the world in general. She is also super famous with my graduate students because I use her example of her discovering the only known official version of the Haitian Declaration of Independence, which actually earned her some attention from the national mainstream media, well deserved. And I used her example of doing that to encourage my students to go out there into the archives to get dirty and then maybe they'll hit the lottery, uh, provided that they are as assiduous and as smart as Julia. Now, Julia is also has been a really good friend. We over the years, we that we've known each other, we always pleasantly joke about the different teams that we have and who was our favorite person in the Haitian Revolution. And of course, Julia represents Team Dessalines, of which I'm Team Louverture, and there's Marlena Dowd, who is Team Christophe. But anyways, all pleasant bantering. Now, you're in for a treat. Those of you who have not read the book, you're about to hear what the book is about from the author herself. Those of you who have read the book know that this book is very, very important in the 21st century at this particular moment when we're fighting for history and facticity, when propaganda seems to be winning the war again. Now, without further ado, let me pass it to the author to tell us about I Have Avenged America. Julia, please take it away.
Thank you so much, Alex. It is weird to call you Alex and not Electro, but that's another story. And also thank you to Anna for organizing this. And I want to thank all the other authors who have kind of participated in this book club over the years. And I have very vivid memories of the first sessions during the pandemic and how they kind of provided this like intellectual lifeline to a really great community of scholars. And it was when I was starting to write this book. And so I really needed those conversations. And this was a forum that was just so essential. And of course, thank you to all of you for showing up on your Saturday afternoon. I hope we make it worth your while. So I wanted to talk a little bit about how I approached the book, why I wanted to write it, and those kinds of things by way of introduction. I wanted to write a biography of Jean-Jacques Dessalines, the man who declared Haitian independence and became the country's first head of state, because I found that the international community, and especially in recent decades, has promoted Toussaint Louverture, Team Alex, Dessalines' predecessor, as like the hero of the Haitian Revolution. And in some ways, he became this like metonym for the fight for abolition and Black equality between 1791 and 1804, even though he died in 1803. And you'll see in like high school textbooks or something that he's the kind of only character that gets introduced. And so even though more and more students are learning about the Haitian Revolution, they're getting this kind of singular narrative. And in kind of this description of the state of the field, I'm really focusing on scholarship and popular histories outside of Haiti. But I had always been really interested in what happened after the Haitian Revolution had allegedly ended. And so Dessalines was always a kind of key figure in my research. And I was constantly struck by the fact that the Dessalines that I encountered in the archives didn't really match the popular or scholarly versions of him that I had read. And so I kind of became much more interested in him as a person, but also how he's been portrayed. During his lifetime and in the centuries after his death, Dessalines' enemies framed him as violent and barbaric as a way to undermine his leadership, but also to undermine Haiti as a country. They kind of came to symbolize one and the same. Um, these people imagined a narrative of Dessalines' revolutionary life as one whose like sole purpose was violence for violence's sake, rather than one driven by any kind of ideological or political commitment. These misconceptions overwhelmed the historical record, and chroniclers and historians, primarily, but not only, those who were kind of observing and writing from outside of Haiti, repeated these narratives, minimizing evidence presented by the Haitian revolutionaries themselves. But kind of in doing this very comprehensive study of the available evidence, a very different portrait of Dessalines emerged. It is, of course, well known that Dessalines was an effective military leader and that he achieved renown on the battlefield. But my research also shows that he was a strategic diplomat who prioritized his country's sovereignty. And he was somebody who kind of surrounded himself with a group of loyal soldiers and friends. And together they really tried to reimagine a future in which they and their people were free. In telling this story, I hope to challenge readers to kind of understand the racism embedded in Enlightenment principles like liberty and equality, and to see how these forms of exclusion are really foundational to the nation-state system that continues to shape the world that we live in today. But at the same time, I want to show that people like Dessalines challenged this discrimination and articulated and enacted alternative versions of freedom and statehood, and that these stories also provide valuable lessons for the 21st century. I don't think you need any prior knowledge of the Haitian Revolution or of Dessalines to read this book. It is definitely not a kind of comprehensive history of the revolution, but I think it's a good introduction, and I've had feedback from friends who read the book mainly because they were friends with me, and they were like, "Oh yeah, I got it." So I think it's good for the classroom, but also good for people who are keen to learn more about the Haitian Revolution. So Jean-Jacques Dessalines was born around 1758 in the French colony of Saint-Domingue. The Haitian historian Jules Rosemond argued in 1903, in preparation for the centenary of Haitian independence, that Dessalines was born on September 20th. And this is the date that is popularly celebrated as his birthday. So happy birthday to Dessalines, but also very importantly, happy birthday to Gregory Pierrot, who shares his birthday and who is with us today. Dessalines was born on a small coffee plantation in Grande Rivière du Nord and enslaved by a white man named Duclos. In the 18th century, Saint-Domingue was the most lucrative colony in the world, and sugar was the main export crop, but then in the second half of the 18th century, coffee became kind of a close second. Duclos was a petit blanc, or poor white man, and was cruel to those whom he enslaved. And we don't know much about Dessalines' time as an enslaved man or an enslaved child. The archival record is very thin. but in a kind of very rare moment when he reflected on his time under slavery, he called it, quote, "our days of suffering," which gives some idea of what it was like. But it was during his time under slavery that he met many of the men and women who formed his kind of inner circle. This included aunts, uncles, cousins, but also close friends, and some of whom continued to refer to him by the name Duclos, even after he had adopted the name Dessalines from the third man who enslaved him. For example, one of these friends was Louis Gabard, who fought alongside him throughout the Revolution. And when Gabard died in 1805, he was buried under a gravestone that read, quote, "As long as he lived, he devoted his time to the freedom of his country, and he deserved the title of friend of his sovereign." That's referring to Dessalines. In addition to kind of limited information about his earlier life, another frustrating thing in studying Dessalines is that we don't really know what he looked like. None of the images that we have of him were created by anybody who saw him. And most of the written descriptions that we have include racist language designed to convince the reader that his appearance was emblematic of his alleged savagery. So the painting on the cover of the book is by the Haitian American painter Ulrich Jean-Pierre. And then in the book, I also reproduce another image, another painting by Ulrich of Dessalines at the Battle of Vertières. That one's sadly only in black and white, but you can find it online as well. And I'm very grateful that Ulrich let me use the paintings in the book. So how do you kind of write about someone whose life was poorly documented and documented mostly by his enemies? And this is something that Marlene Doubt talks about and grapples with in her excellent biography of Henri Christophe. And for me, one of the most important parts of kind of researching this book was for me to find as many documents signed by Dessalines himself as I could. And that's because Dessalines' illiteracy or alleged illiteracy was brandished against him during his life and continues to be today. And so while Louverture gets framed as the politician and the diplomat and the general, Dessalines is often characterized as an illiterate brute whose emotions and violence set the country on the wrong path and isolated Haiti in the world. And obviously this is not what I think. But Dessalines, later in the revolution learned to sign his name, but he didn't write his own letters. But many military and political leaders of the time also used secretaries in their correspondence and in their public writing. So he's not kind of unique in this sense. And for example, Louverture learned to write during the revolution, but to compose his letters and proclamations, he had several secretaries compose drafts, which he then read aloud, which they were then read aloud, and then he offered his feedback until the document was to his liking. So the fact that Dessalines kind of only signed his name does not mean that he did not author the documents. And some of the evidence that I found showed that it was the norm for Dessalines' secretaries to read the letter aloud or the document aloud before he approved it or signed it. It's also possible that he similarly gave instructions before they started writing or offered edits after he had heard a draft. So to kind of help emphasize his own words in his writing, I did research in something like 7 different countries and identified more than 100 letters, proclamations, and laws signed by Dessalines. In writing this book, I took his words seriously and analyzed them in the context of other primary and secondary sources. Throughout the book, I try to emphasize how kind of astounding Dessalines' trajectory was. He was enslaved when the revolution started in 1791. Within 2 years, the revolutionaries had forced the French to abolish slavery in the colony, and then the next year in the entire French Empire. In 1794, Dessalines became an officer in the French colonial army, right, fighting on behalf of France. And for the second half of the 1790s, Dessalines fought for France, right, to protect the abolition of slavery. And he was celebrated by the French for his victories, which is not something that's always emphasized. So, for example, in February of 1799, Philippe Rose Roume de Saint-Laurent, the special agent of the French Directory in Saint-Domingue, praised Dessalines. And he said, quote, "You have, Citizen General, made me very happy by providing me with your letter, the commissions given by the virtuous General-in-Chief to the brave soldiers who rendered so many noteworthy services to the Republic fighting under your command and chasing the English and the counter-revolutionaries from French territory." Roume then assured Dessalines that, quote, "The French people and their government will never forget neither your work nor your military success or your Republican virtues." At the time, Roume's claims may have been genuine, but the French government would, in fact, soon forget and carefully excise any memory of Dessalines' republicanism or his military victories for the French nation. After the turn of the century, Dessalines was, arguably, Toussaint Louverture's second in command and kind of right-hand man. Louverture became Governor General for life under his 1801 colonial constitution, a document that at the time many interpreted as a declaration of independence and that provoked Napoleon Bonaparte to send the Leclerc expedition to Saint-Domingue. And the Leclerc expedition in 1802 provided some of the most kind of complicated and conflictual moments of Dessalines' life. His betrayal of Louverture and Charles Belair, and his alliance with the expedition, at least on paper. And I talk about these moments in the book to try to kind of better understand how Dessalines balanced personal relationships with the broader goals of the revolution and also with self-preservation. His unyielding commitment to the abolition of slavery is what propelled him to leadership in the final war for independence. Dessalines issued the world's second successful Declaration of Independence, and he did so. And in doing so, he established the first nation to permanently ban slavery. And I always think that that's something important to emphasize, especially in the classroom. In reflecting on his revolutionary fight in the Declaration of Independence, Dessalines told his people to, quote, "Remember that I have sacrificed everything to fly to your defense, parents, children, fortune, and now I am rich only with your freedom. Remember that my name has become a horror to all those who want slavery, and that despots and tyrants never utter it unless to curse the day that I was born." An important quotation for the date that he was born. And it's also a statement I think that rings true even today. The title of the book, I Have Avenged America, is unsurprisingly a quotation from Dessalines. On April 28th, 1804, this is 4 months after the Declaration of Independence, he gave another speech to the inhabitants of Haiti, detailing the crimes committed by the French during the colonial period and during the Haitian Revolution. Dessalines had recently ordered the execution of some of the remaining French colonists on the island. And he explained that this was vengeance for past crimes. He argued, quote, "Finally, the hour of vengeance has rung, and the implacable enemies of the rights of man have suffered the punishment due for their crimes." He held the French accountable for their fate and claimed that the Haitians had done what was necessary. Quote, "Yes, we have retaliated against these true cannibals," he claimed. "War for war, crime for crime, outrage for outrage. He then reflected on his own leadership and concluded, yes, I have saved my country. I have avenged America. And the crimes that the French were guilty of were twofold. First, the centuries of enslavement to which they had subjected the Haitians and their ancestors. And second, the atrocities committed by the Leclerc expedition. And I was kind of drawn to this quotation as a title because Dessalines rhetorically situated Haiti's freedom and their kind of freedom struggle in the broader context of colonialism and slavery in the Americas, right? It's I have avenged America. In thinking about Dessalines as like an avenger, I also liked the phrase because it emphasized, on the one hand, his own actions, but then simultaneously recognizing that his actions were in response to the wrongdoing of the French, right? His revolutionary violence was a response to the violence of slavery and colonialism. And should I end here? I wanted to end with one of my favorite quotations of Dessalines. Alex, what should I do here?
No, you just keep going until you feel comfortable. Yeah.
I wanted to end, it's the last quotation of the book, spoiler. And it's one of my favorite quotations. I'll explain why in a second. Okay, I'll skip that. Okay, so Dessalines kind of seemed to foresee some of the scorn that he would receive. And in early 1804, he addressed a proclamation, not just to his fellow Haitians, but instead to, quote, the inhabitants of the universe. He said, "Do not, unheard, accuse us of cruelty." He pleaded with the international community. "Remember our past sufferings, and you will judge less severely our present acts of necessity, of despair." And in the book, I say, to such a plea, we must listen. But then he also had this approach that was slightly more defiant. And in another speech, he confessed to mortals and gods that he had avenged America, and this defiant act was his pride and glory. And he said, "What does it matter how present and future races will judge me? I have done my duty. I know my worth. That is enough for me." And as a biographer, I find it kind of hilarious and reassuring that he was like, "I don't care what you say about me. I'm good with my own actions." And so, in finishing this book, none of what I wrote matters to Dessalines, because he was comfortable with his own actions. And so that's how I kind of end the book, that nothing I say matters to him.
Thank you very much. We are going to take questions. So we do this usually two ways. So you can either raise your hand, like our friend Elisa just did, and we'll call you on. We'll put your video on pin. Or if you're for any reason you have to have your camera off, or you're just shy and prefer to not come on camera, just go ahead and type your questions in the chat. And I'll be monitoring the chat and I'll select them as they come, unless they were already addressed by one of the people that were pinned on video. So you ready for questions, Julia? Thank you so much for that was a great summary. I that was really good summary of a very complex and book.
Thank you.
You could tell you wrote it. Then all right, let's start with Elisa. Elisa, I'm gonna put you on pin and then we'll go to Isaiah.
I went. I do the
All right.
go ahead. I stay.
You already put Anna, you already put Elisa on pin?
Yes.
I don't see her. That's weird. All right, go ahead, Elisa.
Good morning, everyone. Ana Lucia and Alex, thanks for hosting. Julia, that was wonderful. I have some undergrads who came today, and this was a model of a presentation explaining what you're intervening in the scholarship and your new argument and the sources that you use to get there. So that was really great. And again, it's an impressive challenge to be finding that quote about the French praising him, but also the other quote, right? We know I've avenged America, but the part where he calls the French cannibals is important because it's usually reversed. Here's my question. You pitched this today in terms of an intervention in popular memory outside of Haiti. So I was wondering, I'm sure you already have. So I just wanted to hear more about how you see your book as an intervention into Haitian memory, whether Haitian popular or academic memory of Dessalines. I think you've seen the film by Antonin, so I'd be curious what you think of that. But in general, yeah, I'll just stop there.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Alyssa. And thank you for inviting your students. Hello to all your students. That's amazing. I think it's a great question. And I think that there's, in a sense, a way that there's kind of two different sides of a very similar argument that happens. And primarily what I talked about today is that, Dessalines is framed as somebody who is very violent, and he's criticized for that violence because it's kind of excessive, or allegedly excessive, and somehow uniquely, he is like uniquely violent in this very violent context. The flip side, I think, is that he is kind of within Haitian scholarship, is that he's kind of celebrated for that, right? That it is, that he was the kind of man to get the job done. This is coupe tête boule caille, and that he so there's the similar kind of military leadership and violence. From one side, it gets critiqued. From the other side, it is celebrated, and that his kind of actions were necessary for the success of the revolution. And so I think whether he's being celebrated or critiqued for this alleged unique violence, I do think that his leadership and his life were much more complicated than that. And so I'm hoping that, in kind of contributing to those discussions, that it's similarly highlighting his complexity and the kind of diversity of ways that he contributed to the revolution, and how he was successful.
Great, thank you.
I think Isaiah has a question.
Yeah, Isaiah, hi. I just put you in pin. Isaiah, you want to come in?
Yeah, I'm not at the best location right now, but I can get on camera if necessary.
No, that's not necessary. We can hear your voice. Go ahead.
Yes. First and foremost, I want to thank Julia Gaffield. This is a great introduction, sort of, to the life of Dessalines. And as I'm sure she already knows, there's little to no scholarship or literature in the Anglophone world, at least, when it comes to oh, sorry, it muted me. The question that I had was, how do you reflect on Dessalines' commitment to sustaining and the continuation of the plantation economy, and his sort of lack of looking to other alternatives to, I guess, alternate economic forms within Haiti, and via that also sort of having this tumultuous relationship with those who did explore alternate forms of living within post-slavery Haiti. I'm specifically talking about the Maroons. That's my question.
Thank you. I think it's a great question, and of course the labor system that was implemented after the abolition of slavery, starting with Sonthonax and Paul Varel, but continued by Louverture and then continued by Dessalines, has rightly been critiqued. And I situate. I try to, throughout the book, discuss, his actions in the context of what came before, right? And the labor codes that came in 1793 and 1794 were designed with the intention that the purpose of the colony was still to produce agricultural products for export, right? And that continues under Louverture. And you kind of imagine that once you declare independence, that there's an opportunity for, as you said, a reimagining of the labor system, right? Because you're not a colony. The sole purpose of your existence is not to kind of make wealth for the metropole. But in 1804 through 1806, Haiti's in a bit of a hard place, right? They are not, the country is not recognized by any foreign country. And the only countries that are willing to trade with them want to do so to get those same kind of, staple crops for export. And they kind of, it's also in this context of ongoing warfare with France, right? I mentioned earlier, like the alleged end of the revolution. And one of the things that I have always tried to talk about is that after January 1st, 1804, it really wasn't clear that the war was over and that, Haitian independence was kind of guaranteed. So in this context of ongoing war with France, they need these other allies. And to get these other allies, they need to be trading what the other people want, and they need to exchange for, war material and, kind of political diplomatic alliances. So I think, I think that these labor systems were in some ways a product of this continued foreign influence and the kind of outside interests in what Saint-Domingue and then Haiti kind of could or should be. There might have been a way to kind of reimagine the labor system while also maintaining these kind of other military and diplomatic concerns. I don't know what that would have looked like. And, had France conceded, had they actually acknowledged when they were defeated, would Dessalines have implemented a different kind of labor system? I don't know. But I think the focus for me is that the ongoing war with France really shaped a lot of his policy as a head of state.
Um, if I could just slightly add
Yep.
at least a follow-up to that, which is then how do you sort of harmonize that with his relationship with those who decided to live in the more rural side, maybe specifically the Maroons, because in your book and also in Jean Cashmere's Haitians of Decolonial History, he talks about how even though they have the plantation economy going, both by Toussaint and Dessalines and Henri, there was still the hunting down of Maroons or the sort of the combating with them. How do you harmonize that, I guess?
I mean, these were people who were kind of challenging the economic system that he was prioritizing because of these outside concerns. That, so I think that, he was committed to kind of maintaining the system, and people who were not willing to work on the plantations, which many were not, were kind of threatening what he saw as the kind of economic foundation of how they were going to defend the nation.
Thank you so much. I really do appreciate this. And this is foundational work for Haitian history in the Anglophone world. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Isaiah, for your question. We did have a question and then it disappeared. We had a hand raised and it disappeared. All right, let's see if, and I don't remember who it was. I will.
It's Rosemary.
It's Rosemary. Where is she?
Perhaps she left. I don't know. I don't see her either.
She may have.
No, she's there. She's there. Rosemary Akpan.
You want to come on, Rosemary?
Yeah, it's me. I'm here.
All right. Please go ahead. Ask your question.
I think she already answered my question with the former question, but I'll just ask it again, maybe. So, I'm actually interested in reading this book. So in the book, what work, that phrase shows, that is, I have avenged America. How does that phrase is taken like at home and abroad? Then a question on the sources. which of your sources try to translate this vengeance into institutions such as citizenship, land policy, and trade? And did you have any part of this book where this project collided with gendered expectations of work, family, and military service? I don't know if I think you've touched on it, but you can still.
Sorry, I'm not sure I understood your first question about the title. Can you
Yeah,
ask it again?
I said the title. Can you hear me?
Yep.
I think I haven't read the book, but I think the title echoes Dessalines' claim to have avenged America.
Mhm.
So I'm asking that in the book, what work does that phrase do politically, like at home and abroad? That's the first question. Then the second question is, which sources show how he tried to translate this vengeance into institutions such as citizenship, land, policy, and trade? Like, I just want to know if it's there. Like, I just want to, and how does those projects, these institutions collide with gendered expectations of work, family, and military service?
Okay, thank you for those three questions. In terms of I have avenged America, I see the work that it does for me, right? He's kind of situating Haiti's fight in a broader kind of fight against colonialism and slavery. And one of the, I think, kind of really interesting policies that he enacts, and I think we can go into a bunch of different directions with it. But I think one of the kind of really interesting policies is that he offers to pay for the passage to Haiti of I think he references Black people and people of color who were native to the island, who had been kind of removed, and offers their passage from the United States, but also from Martinique and Guadeloupe, so that they could become Haitian citizens and kind of gain access to the freedoms that they had won. I don't think it actually applies necessarily just for people who had been born in Saint-Domingue. And so he's kind of expanding the scope of the freedom that they had won during the revolution without kind of, expanding beyond the island. I think it also helps us like situate Dessalines and his revolutionary fight in this kind of broader age of revolutions, discourse, and that thinking about kind of who we're centering and why. I think the phrase "I have avenged America" kind of reorients our perspective a little bit. I should have written down all your questions. I'm so sorry. In terms of gender, this is a book that is very much dominated by men and kind of heavily male military. Although whenever I found sources about the involvement of women, I tried to integrate them. I also talk as much as possible about his wife, Marie-Claire Heureuse. And I tried to think about how kind of her reputation and the way she gets framed in contrast or as a compliment to Dessalines is really interesting. But I kind of took note about like how she was kind of always with him throughout the final years of the revolution, and kind of what it meant for her to be traveling kind of around in these different scenarios, and her health and her safety are in jeopardy at different moments. One of my all-time favorite essays is an essay by, I think she's a sociologist, Mimi Scheller, called Militarism and Manhood, or it's like Sword-Bearing Citizens. And it really talks about how kind of masculine the early Haitian state was, and how much the military kind of played a role in establishing, citizenship as male, even though that wasn't kind of necessarily on paper. Anyway, and then I'm forgetting your second one. I'm so sorry. I really should have written them down.
And the
No,
second
I
one
think
was
you addressed
yeah, go ahead,
all.
Rose.
You addressed all. You addressed
Yeah.
all. Thank you.
Thank you, Rosemary. I think we have several questions on the chat. Yannick, hold on before I put you in the camera. Let me take at least one question that's been sitting there for like 20 minutes from Ernesto. And Ezequiel Ernesto. And Ezequiel asks the genre question. Do you consider this a biography or a microhistory? I'm not going to assume to differentiate those two, but how do you differentiate them in this book?
Probably a biography. I don't know. What do
You,
you think? I
we
want to know
were
what you think.
you were together in that biography panel, right? So
Yeah.
I mean, with Kayam and Marlena. So
Yeah. And
yeah.
I think writing a biography, sure, I'll call it a biography. I don't think it's something that I had really aspired to for for like, I don't know, that it's not a genre of writing. I did not write a biography of Dessalines because I wanted to write a biography, I think is what I'm trying to say. I wrote the biography of Dessalines because I think there was a need for a biography of Dessalines. So I'm not sure that I'll ever write another biography ever again. Who knows? But I found it a really kind of interesting project and a really challenging project in a lot of ways. I don't know. I mean, I
And
would,
we're glad you did. You do go from birth to death.
that's,
Yeah.
yeah. And then memory and stuff. I mean, I would be interested, like I think a lot of the work that a lot of the research and writing that I've done has kind of straddled several different fields. And I once, in talking with some friends in grad school, said that I was like, well, I'm like a diplomatic historian. And they were like, don't tell anyone that. Because I think diplomatic history, I don't know, gets a bad rep. And I like diplomatic history. But I think there's also some legal history involved and kind of various different types of history. So maybe it's both biographical and microhistorical. I don't know.
All right. I think Yannick's question, Samuel Joseph, I'll take your question after Yannick, since Yannick is coming on camera. And I think your question is quick and easy to answer. She already put it in the chat. Yannick, you want to unmute yourself?
Yes, hi. My question is, if did you find in your research that when Alexandre Pétion ruled that part of Haiti, was the economy based mostly on small coffee plantations? And when Christophe was running his part of the country, he continued with the large sugar plantation economy that had been started by Louverture and continued with Dessalines.
I feel like this is a question for Marlena Doubt. Marlene, are you able to unmute or no? Not to put you on the spot. I mean, I think, is she able to unmute or no? She's going to be angry with me for calling her out.
She would have by now. She would have by now.
She's like, no, I'm
probably
good,
like
actually.
she's making sandwiches for the kids or something right now while listening to us.
I think I will point to the work of Jean Casimir that, a lot of the rulers and heads of state in independent Haiti kind of wanted to implement a lot of different kinds of labor regimes that they were not able to because of massive resistance on the part of the laboring population. And in my experience, in my research, particularly in terms of Haiti's trade relationship with the British, that sugar production in Haiti dropped significantly. And I think that goes for, throughout the country, and it dropped significantly because of labor opposition. And they were producing a lot more coffee and other crops like cotton. Yeah. I'm not an expert on the kind of different, particularly after Dessalines was assassinated.
The reason I ask is because even among Haitians, some Haitian historians, Pétion is considered as having been more popular than Dessalines, that Dessalines lost a lot of popularity because he was trying to, continue, perpetuate large plantation agriculture, and that created a lot of opposition from the slaves who did not, former slaves who didn't understand why this was continuing, while the coffee economy was more decentralized and less, brutal. And that's partly why Pétion, died as a very popular ruler, while Dessalines ended up being assassinated.
I think you're right in the sense that these policies were not popular. And I talk a little bit about in the book how kind of Dessalines' assassination was kind of met with like slight ambivalence. But I also don't think that Pétion's leadership was kind of democratizing because it was coming from him, that it was instead coming from the population pushing back, right? And that happens throughout the country, that there is a kind of preference for coffee cultivation, and that it's they're more successful at pushing back, I think, in the South. But this is also not kind of covered within the book or my specific area of focus.
Well, thank you, Yannick, for that question, and thank you, Julia. And of course, you do talk about the ambivalence of that popularity towards the end of the book, and it's hard to read historically what exactly we're looking at. I have a question from the chat by Samuel Joseph that's been waiting for a while. It's a good question. It brings us back to the question of memory towards the end of the book, and reception in the larger Atlantic world. And I'll read the question completely. Samuel Joseph says, Dessalines during the American Revolution was involved in the liberation of Savannah as part of the French regiment of black soldiers. He also was instrumental as leader in sending troops to free other oppressed people throughout the Caribbean and the Americas. You can comment on that too if you want. What the question is, why do you think this is not more widely known or held in America, those region, and or throughout the world? A great presentation. He compliments you. So I do remember you saying at some point that it's not clear whether he went to Savannah or not, but you guess he did. But I'll let you tackle those.
So I think we might be confused. So the third man who enslaved him, Jean-Jacques Dessalines, is the person who went to Savannah, and we kind of know this from his record of military service that's in the French colonial archives, and I think that this is one of the areas in the book where I'm like, we're going to speculate a little bit. But I do think that it is significant that the third person who enslaved him was a free black man named Jean-Jacques Dessalines. And this was a man who had spent like more than 2 decades, I can't remember the exact number, in the colonial militia, right? Like this was like a career militia guy. And he had kind of raised through the ranks. He had fought in Savannah. And he my math is, I'm going to forget all the math, but he enslaved Dessalines for 5 to 7 years or something like that. Read the book if you want to know the exact numbers. But Dessalines chose to keep his last name for the rest of his life. And there are many instances in which Haitian revolutionaries did not keep the last name of the person who enslaved them, which was kind of the practice in the colony, that if you were enslaved, your last name was the last name of your enslaver. And so a lot of Haitian revolutionaries just have one name because they chose to drop the last name of their enslaver. And so I speculate about this relationship between Jean-Jacques Dessalines and Janvier Dessalines, and I spell them differently in the book because they signed their names different spelling, but also kind of for clarity. And that kind of, it seems like it might be significant that that somebody who had gotten kind of social capital and status based on military service may have, I don't know, passed on those values or passed on those skills, and that it is possible, highly speculative again, that Dessalines may have served in the colonial militia as an enslaved man. And so I think that's the connection with Savannah, is that it's Janvier Dessalines. And then I'm forgetting the second half again. I'm so sorry.
There's also the idea that he sent troops, he sent battalions or divisions to other places in the Caribbean basin and in the Americas to support other people. I know you don't address that direct, but go ahead.
That would have been Pétion who did that.
Yeah.
And I think that what's really interesting is that part of Dessalines, he starts this policy of kind of non-intervention abroad under his rule that, we're not going to bother other colonies. We're not going to send foreign expeditions. And of course, there's the kind of notable exception of Santo Domingo. But from independence, the revolutionaries considered the entire island of Hispaniola to be Haiti. And so they didn't consider the expedition to Santo Domingo to be this kind of foreign expedition. And I think they were very conscious of like not trying to make people mad. It was like self-preservation. We're not going to, invade Jamaica and abolish and start a revolution there because they wanted to trade with the British to help protect them against the French, right? So there's this very conscious, set of policies that's like, we're just going to keep to ourselves. Please leave us alone. And the exception to that is, as I said before, that he's willing to kind of pay for people to come back to Haiti. And there's a kind of expansion of the terms of, or the size, or like the scope of freedom by recruiting people to come back, but not kind of geographically going out. And that policy later gets expanded on under the 1816 Constitution that welcomes all people of African descent and indigenous people to Haiti and offers citizenship. And Ada Ferrer has talked about this in her article called Free Soil, something.
Thank you, everybody, for all of your questions. We're coming up on the hour, so we're getting ready to wrap up for today, this wonderful episode of Slavery Archive Book Club. First, just double checking. Yes, I know. I'm gonna pass it to you, Anna, so you can talk about the next episode soon. But I just wanted to double check that nobody has any burning questions for Julia. Going once, going twice, going 3 times. So please then join me with your emojis in thanking Julia for this wonderful conversation. What a treat to spend an hour with you on a Saturday. And those of you who haven't read this book, oh, I devoured it from cover to cover. So get your
Yes.
copy. It is an eminently readable book that you can use in your classroom, but also give to your friends that don't know anything about the Haitian Revolution. It's not a bad place to start. If they have no idea and all they get is, like what they learn on TV, then please give them this book. Now, with that,
Thank you so
thank you,
much, Alex.
Julia. I am going to pass the pin to Anna, who is going to talk to us about our next episode.
Thank you so much, Julia. And I think that this book is even more important because of the period that we are living in this country, and also in Haiti itself, and also with all these other books also that we had this year on Haiti with Alex and Marlene as well. So thank you so much for the book. We'll continue discussing and reading. Then just inviting you all, we have a Freedom Ship with Marcus Hedeker on October the 4th, which is a Saturday. So in about 2 weeks from now, and it's also at 2 p.m. And you can already register by going to slaveryarchive.com. Otherwise, thank you so much for all who attended. This is going to stay on YouTube, but then you can recommend to your students or colleagues or anyone who may be interested in reading more about Dessalines. And see you soon, I hope.
See you soon, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Thank you
Isaiah, for your
all.
question, for coming.
Thank you.
Bye, Annika. See you around.
Thank you. Bye.